Hello, Gaylords. Welcome to Fieros Reborn with me, Fieros Reborn. On the channel, Fieros Reborn. Reborn. So, I'm going to talk about Ward 12. This is a Fieros' story time. Time for stories. I've got a bit of a cold. Yeah. So, I'm sorry if I'm not full energy today, but I've got a cold. I'm actually more high energy now that I've got a cold than I was before, because this is how colds work, okay? Now I'm going to tell it to you straight. This is how colds work. You go for a period of time, your emotional system gets stressed. It keeps getting stressed. It builds up a backlog of emotional garbage inside your body system, emotional mind-body system, right? Stress, depression, just little bits of stuff, little bits of grief, little bits of sadness, little bits of anger, little bits of stress, everything just little bits, little bits, little bits. And after a period of time, your body has had enough and it goes, right, time for a cold. And that's what I've got. So it just incapacitates you for a little while. You can't do anything. You feel like shit, and then you feel better afterwards. So I actually feel like I'm less depressed now that I've got a cold than I was in the time preceding it. Because I was starting to feel rough, man. I was starting to feel like like every day was a bit of a drudge, like, you know, like. And now I'm a bit more like. So by the time this cold is done, I'll be like, but obviously I can't do it properly because I've got a cold. Right, so we're going to talk about Ward 12 again. Okay, so let me think about Ward 12 for a moment. I mean, maybe we're coming to the end of it. We surely can't be coming to the end of Ward 12 stuff. Well, let's go back a little bit. So I've spoken about Ward 10. I think I've covered everything about Ward 10 enough already. I've said all the things that mattered. I remember, like, after one of the most recent videos, I was thinking, I haven't covered like enough about why I was even sectioned in the first place, like some of my behaviour to my parents and why they thought I was ill. You know, because I've been trying to portray myself as being not ill during this storytelling. I've been trying to portray it as the spiritual journey that I went through. But I have to also account for the fact that people around me didn't see it in those terms. So I've been hesitant to call myself ill. I've been reluctant to go along with the narrative that the medical profession and my parents were telling, because that narrative has had enough airtime already. And my own narrative about, like, when I say narrative, I mean my own story, my own perspective about how things went down has been chronically undervalued. So whenever I would bring up ideas around it being a spiritual journey or a psychic awakening or anything like that, my parents in the medical profession actually used that type of stuff as though it was a symptom. So me talking about spirituality and God and the universe and signs of the universe and stuff was seen as a symptom of my mental illness. So I really couldn't win. And even like after the whole event had finished, if I was to talk about my own experience of mental health, psychosis, if I was to talk about that with my family, mainly my family, in terms of it being a spiritual awakening or a religious experience, even any kind of understanding that did not fit with that old psychosis model, then I would come up against resistance, and we would have an argument about. So my dad and I had this argument, I don't know, about half a year or so ago, about whether or not I went through psychosis. And I said I didn't experience psychosis. I experienced other people telling me I was going through psychosis, but I didn't experience a psychosis. So in order to say I went through psychosis means I have to take on someone else's perspective and say that it was more true than my perspective was. So I think the best thing that I can do is to say that other people experienced me as having gone through a psychosis. I did not experience that, but I understand that other people have a different view of that. So it's kind of like saying, here I am, here's my view, here is what my view was as well of the past, and then here is their view, and here's what their view was. And I just wanted to make it clear that that's their view and this is my view, because there was a blurring for a while of me taking on a kind of story about what happened to me that I didn't actually experience. So I basically, that was fed back to me, that the reason that I was hospitalized was for such and such and such and such. And then I took that on as being the only version, like the only truth. Whereas my reasoning as to why I was sectioned was different from why other people thought I was sectioned. So my understanding of being sectioned was that basically no one understood where I was coming from, and this caused a long-term source of conflict with my parents. And as things got worse and worse in terms of me not being able to communicate what I was experiencing with my parents, they felt that I was going into a psychosis or a delusionary state. But from my point of view, they were in a delusionary state because they weren't accessing reality at the deeper level that I was. So it's like a mismatch of realities, and so I was communicating from one place and they were communicating from another place. I felt that my place of communication was deeper, so it was coming from a more sort of down here emotional place, and theirs I felt was coming from up here. And so we were having this clash, and I couldn't get through to them and they couldn't get through to me, so it was just a massive conflict, which was then turned into a medical thing from my perspective, as in I just got labelled. Basically, I just got labelled by medical professionals as being going through a psychosis, and it was not nice, actually. I didn't like being told that I was having psychosis, because it wasn't a nice feeling to be told that you have an illness. Whereas from my perspective, it didn't feel like an illness. It didn't feel like an illness at all. It felt like something else. It felt like something new and mystical, and I felt like I was being more myself than ever before. But other people just couldn't understand the change in my character. And because of this conflict between how they wanted to perceive me, or how they used to perceive me, and how I had changed, this conflict between who I was now and how other people who previously knew me, how they saw me. There's a conflict between like my old self and my new self. And my parents, I felt like they wanted to hold on to the old self version of me, and I wanted to hold on to this new self because the new self was more powerful, more exciting, more unboundaried, deeper. I felt wiser, even. I felt very wise. I felt like I could sort of really perceive more deeply how people were feeling than I ever had before. And I was braver. I felt brave and courageous to be able to talk to people from a place that didn't have any of the limitations of social convention. So I was able to just say whatever it was that was on my mind, whether it was nonsense, whether it was inappropriate, whether it was fun or anything really. So I didn't have any boundaries between people. So I didn't care whether I said something rude to someone in power or not, for example, which obviously got me into trouble. Stuff like that. So yeah, I have actually talked about some of the stuff that made people think that I was going through psychosis, and it's not like I don't want to stop them from having their belief. If they believe that about me, then fine. But I choose to go with my own understanding of what I went through, because it's more empowering for me actually to recall things through my own eyes than to recall them through this story that was told to me afterwards. So there was a really specific set of instances where the story was relayed to me while I was in Ward 12. So there was a period where I was like having leave, so I could get like 4 hours out of the ward at a time. called Section 17 leave. And I remember during that time, that doctor, there was this one particular doctor who was a young Indian doctor who was, I think he was kind of like newly qualified or doing his rotations or something in hospitals in different places. And he gave me this like sheet or set of sheets from, sorry, got a bit of a cold, from the Royal College of Psychiatry about psychosis and schizophrenia and the symptom profile of that. And he was trying to get me to come to terms with my illness. So if I'm going to look that up now, but I remember reading it and feeling very disheartened about the whole thing, because I could see that some of those things fit me, honestly. Royal College of Psychiatrists, Schizophrenia leaflet, okay. But I didn't like it because it was very disempowering. It was very depressing to be given this stuff, and it was like they were saying that all these symptoms were what I had, and therefore everything else that I had experienced through my own eyes, ears, mouth, through my own nervous system was incorrect. So let's have a look. What are the symptoms of schizophrenia? So this is the type of stuff that I got given. What are the symptoms of schizophrenia? Its symptoms are described as positive or negative. Positive symptoms. These are unusual experiences. Many people have them from time to time, and they need not be a problem. In schizophrenia, they tend to be much more intense, troublesome, preoccupying, and distressing. For example, hallucinations. A hallucination happens when you hear, smell, feel, or see something, but it isn't caused by anything or anybody around you. The commonest one is hearing voices. I'm just going to read it out verbatim from this without any comment. What do voices sound like? They sound utterly real. They usually seem to be coming from outside you, although other people can't hear them. You may hear them coming from different places, or they may seem to come from a particular place or thing. Voices can talk to you directly or talk to each other about you. It can be like overhearing a conversation. They can be pleasant, but often are rude, critical, abusive, or just plain irritating. How do people react to them? You may try to ignore them, talk back to them, or even shout back at them if they are particularly loud or irritating. You may feel that you have to do what they tell you, even if you know you shouldn't. You may wonder if they are coming from hidden microphones, from loudspeakers, or the spirit world. Where do they come from? Voices are not imaginary. You really do hear them, but they are created by the mind. Scans have shown that the part of the brain that lights up when you hear voices is the same area that is active when you talk or form words in your mind. The brain seems to mistake some of your thoughts or inner speech for voices coming from outside you. Do other people hear voices? You can also hear voices in severe depression. They tend to be simpler, repeating the same negative or critical word or phrase over and over again. You can also hear voices which don't interfere with your life. They may be pleasant or not very loud, or only happen from time to time. These voices do not usually call for any kind of treatment. Other kinds of hallucination. You may see things that aren't there. Or, pardon me, doing farts. You may see things that aren't there, or may smell or taste things that aren't there. Hallucinations. Some people have uncomfortable or painful feelings in their body, or feelings of being touched or hit. Delusions. A delusion happens when you believe something and are completely sure of it, while other people think you have misunderstood what is happening. It's as though you see things in a completely different way from everyone else. You have no doubts, but other people see your belief as mistaken, unrealistic, or strange. If you do try to talk about your ideas with someone, your reasons don't make sense to them, or you can't explain, you just know. It's an idea or set of ideas that can't be explained as part of your culture, background, or religion. And this is still talking about schizophrenia. How does it start? It may suddenly dawn on you that at last you really understand what is going on. This may follow weeks or months when you have felt that there has been something wrong, but you couldn't work out what it was. A delusional idea can be a way of explaining hallucinations. If you hear voices that talk about you, you may explain it to yourself with the idea that a government agency is tracking you. Paranoid delusions. These are ideas that make you feel persecuted or harassed. They may be unusual. It feels as though MI5 or the government is spying on you. Pardon me. You may think that neighbours are influencing you with special powers or technology. I wouldn't put it past them. Every day, you start to believe your partner is unfaithful. Sometimes they are unfaithful. You do so because of odd details that seem to have nothing to do with sex or not being faithful. Other people can see nothing to suggest that this is true. It may be upsetting. Feeling persecuted is obviously upsetting for you. It can also be distressing for the people you see as your persecutors, especially if they are close to you like your family. Ideas of reference. You start to see special meanings in ordinary day-to-day events. It feels as though things are specially connected to you, that radio or TV programs are about you, or that someone is telling you things in odd ways, for example, through the colours of cars passing in the street. Coping with delusions. Delusions may or may not affect the way you behave. It can be hard to talk to other people about them. You realise that they won't understand. If you feel that other people are trying to harm or harass you, you will probably just keep to yourself. If you feel really threatened, you may want to hit back in some way. You may try to escape your feelings of persecution by moving from place to place. After a few days or weeks in a new place, though, the feelings just come back. Muddled thinking, or thought disorder. You find it harder to concentrate. It's more and more difficult to finish an article in the newspaper or watch a TV program to the end, keep up with your studies at college, keep your mind on your job at work. Your thoughts wander. You drift from idea to idea, but there's no clear connection between them. After a minute or two, you can't remember what you were originally trying to think about. Some people describe their thoughts as being misty or hazy when this is happening. When your thoughts are disconnected in this way, it can be hard for other people to understand you. Feelings of being controlled. You can also feel that your thoughts have suddenly disappeared, as though someone has taken them out of your mind. Your thoughts feel as though they are not yours. It's as though someone else has put them into your mind. Your body is being taken over, or that you are being controlled like a puppet or a robot. Some people explain these experiences by thinking it's the radio, television, or laser beams. Laser beams? Okay. Or that a device has been implanted in them. Other people blame witchcraft, angry spirits, God, or the devil. Oh my God, there's more. Oh, there's not that much more. Negative symptoms. You start to lose your normal thoughts, feelings, and motivations. You lose interest in life. Your energy, emotions, and get up and go just drain away. It's hard to feel excited or enthusiastic about anything. Remember, this is all symptoms of schizophrenia, possible symptoms. You can't concentrate. You don't bother to get up or go out of the house. You stop washing or tidying or keeping your clothes clean. You feel uncomfortable with people. People can find it hard to understand that negative symptoms are really symptoms, not just laziness. This can make it difficult for both you and your family. Your family feel that you just need to pull yourself together. You can't explain that. You just can't. Negative symptoms are less dramatic than positive symptoms, but can be really hard to live with. So I got given something like that, okay? The one I got given was more kind of clinical sounding than that. That seems a bit dumbed down. But, oh my God, the thing is frozen. Oh, how long has it been frozen for? Oh, for God's sake. Sorry. Well, whatever. Hopefully you can still hear me. Yeah, so I got given this form while I was in Ward 12, and I read it a bit, and I was just so depressed, because what that was saying to me was, everything that you've been experiencing has all been wrong. You've, like, all the ideas you've had and all the insights you think you've had are wrong and invalid and incorrect, and you've been living a lie or something like that, you know? So I felt rotten reading that. And I could see that some of it was accurate, and then some of it matched my behaviour and stuff. But I really didn't want to take that on as the correct view of things, because I felt like it was made me into a failure or something, that I'd been wrong. Oh man, I'd been wrong all that time. So not only was I trapped in hospital, but I'd also been having an incorrect, invalid experience, and everything that I'd been saying was not actually what I thought it was. So that felt very depressing, and I guess sort of shameful, or like I'd failed somehow, like I wasn't good enough because I hadn't got it right, and this was the real truth. So I wasn't happy about that. But I think if I pinpoint from that moment, that was when I actually started to take on that understanding for myself, and to take on the medical diagnosis as my own personal view of myself, which it's not healthy to do that. I don't think it's healthy to do that. I don't think it's healthy to think of yourself as a schizophrenic, or healthy to think of yourself as a depressive or a depressed person. I don't think that those are helpful. It might be helpful for the medical profession to use those terms, but I don't think that it's wise as a person to apply those terms to yourself, because as soon as you start applying those terms to yourself, you start acting along the lines of those symptom profiles, or you start treating yourself and seeing yourself the way that other people see a schizophrenic, or see a depressed person, or a depressive, or whatever you want to call it, or someone with bipolar. So if you start calling yourself these names, then you start forming a self-image around an illness, which means it's very hard to get out of that illness, because you think it's what you are. You think, oh, I'm a schizophrenic now, or I'm a psychotic person now, or I'm a delusional person, or I'm a depressed person. And so how are you going to stop being depressed if you believe yourself to be a depressed person? You have to stop being that person. Whereas if you think of mental illness as transient phenomena instead, and don't globalize it into a worldview or a self-view, don't globalize it into a self-image. Don't say, I'm a schizophrenic now, or I'm depressed now. Just say, I'm experiencing depression, or I'm experiencing these voices in my head, or I'm experiencing these feelings. There's much you can get over things by looking at it in that way, because if you just globalize it and solidify it into an identity for yourself, you're going to find that you don't want to give up your identity. So you start behaving as a patient, you start behaving as an ill person, you start behaving in correspondence and in conformity to a self-image of you as being broken, deficient, socially rejected, failure, stigmatized, unhappy, and you use your behavior, continued behavior, to reaffirm this ill perception of yourself. So I don't think it's wise to apply your mental health labels to yourself. I think it's better to, if you're having symptoms, and if medical professionals are calling you this, that, and the other, then fine, let them do that. That's their job. But for you, I just want you to see yourself as a human being who's going through various different experiences. Some of them may be quite difficult, but you are a human being, and your experience is valid, and your experience is valuable, in fact. Even though it may be very negative and harmful and difficult and stressful for you to be going through, your experience is valuable to yourself as learning and as growth, and as something to heal from in the future, or make progress through healing through. But it's also valuable as a human experience to learn from for other people as well. So that I think that what I'm trying to say is that there is value in all these different experiences that we have of what we call mental health or mental illness, and that we need to start understanding that there is people who are going through mental illness experiences actually still have something to offer, and they still are a human being. Okay, and it's very easy to just kind of objectify people who have got a mental health problem, and to solidify that as their identity. And I refuse to do that with anyone who's presenting to me as behaving strangely. I would rather say, the way I explain it to myself is, okay, they're behaving in this strange way. Now, I might also diagnose them in some way, but I'm not gonna kind of like use that as their identity. I'm saying, oh, that seems to be like the same sort of thing as a bipolar type of thing. But I wouldn't start going around. I just don't think that the labels are appropriate as an identity marker. I think they should be used as a way to understand behavior, but not to understand identity. That's the thing. Basically, don't put it as an identity. It's the same thing why I don't think that calling yourself an alcoholic is helpful, because if you think I am an alcoholic, how are you ever going to become non-alcoholic? You have to change your actual identity. So it would be better to say I'm behaving alcoholically, or I am doing alcoholic things, or I am going through alcoholism, for example, because those have changeability to them. Whereas if you say I am an alcoholic, you freeze your identity, and that what it is. That's who I am. Or if you say I'm going through alcoholism, or I'm acting like an alcoholic, that's even better. I'm being alcoholic at the moment. That's different. That implies change is possible. So yeah, I just think it's much more healthy to think of things as like transient phenomena, that things will change and things can change. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth on labels. God damn with the frozen face. I could have frozen it in a better fucking position. Anyway. Oh man. So Ward 12. Well, things are starting to fade from that time. They don't seem so important to talk about anymore. Okay. So I spoke about patient protected time, which was Scrabble time, basically. I think that lasted for half an hour to an hour. I don't actually know. But I kind of participated here and there, but I just wasn't really feeling like doing anything in hospital, honestly. I tell you what, the days at hospital were the longest days I've ever been through. I'm just going to blow my nose. 1 second. There you go. That's life for you. Nose is being blown. Fuse is being blown. Mine's being blown. Bombs being blown. Right. Blown up. Okay. Yeah. The long days. The days. Oh God, the time went so slowly in hospital. I've already mentioned that the 3 best things in the day were breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Because what else is there to do? There was actually a lot of stuff to do, but when you feel like shit and you're trapped in this place, you don't really want to do anything. And in fact, most people didn't want to do anything. So they had a pool table there, they had a table tennis table, they had a piano, they had puzzles, they had books. They actually had a computer room as well, but that you only had access to that at certain times. They had an art room, they had a home economics type of cooking kitchen room, whatever. They had a garden, as in like a greenhouse bit, which I did a little bit on, but I didn't get access to that until later. They had a sort of relaxation room as well, where they had I think they had a meditation session in there once. We had a aromatherapy session in there, but then there's someone in there. Right, okay, I'll try and tell the story. So it's quite a funny story, really. So I went in for an aromatherapy, no, meditation session. I think meditation session, right? With this occupational therapist. I forget her name now. But her name was Hannah, actually. Now that I remember it, her name was Hannah. Oh God. Yeah, her name was Hannah. Anyway, and she was reading this like kind of meditation script, so a bit like a hypnosis meditation type of thing. So she had this kind of script written down, and she'd read it out, and you follow it, and you like do this relaxation exercise thing, whatever. And it was kind of like a guided relaxation, hypnosis, meditation type of thing. Okay, fine. I've done that sort of thing before. I was up for it. There's nice music playing in the background, soothing music in the background, yeah. But of course, we're all in a mental health psychiatric ward establishment, okay? This is not like in like a community centre meditation setting where you've paid like, I don't know, £5 sitting in a circle and you're going to have a meditation. This is not that. This is in a psychiatric ward with a bunch of nutters, okay? Me included. I personally think that I was one of the more sane people in there, but we had one particular person whose name was Gavin, who one of his tics or his expressions of his illness or whatever was to shout randomly, very loudly. So kind of like Tourette's, but not really Tourette's, because it was much more frequent than Tourette's, as in like that was all he did. All he did was ticked. Tourette's, people with Tourette's will have kind of a normal conversation and then tick occasionally, depending on their rate of ticking. But Gavin was just like, his whole deal was shouting. So so you can imagine. So we're sat in this like dimly lit room with this nice atmospheric music playing in the background, and then you've got Hannah reading this script from the meditation script, whatever, soothing, relax your muscles, listen to the sounds. Ward 10, sister! And then you're like, what? Where's this loud shouting? And you're trying to relax, and there's this guy who's freaking out every 2 minutes, and then to be quiet and relaxed and listen to your breathing. 1, 10, sister, and you're like, oh God, yeah, this is like a fucking comedy sketch. You can't relax and do a meditation when there's someone shouting every 5 fucking seconds. So it was ridiculous. And Hannah was there like saying, Gavin, could you be quiet, please? Obviously he can't be quiet because that's part of his condition, right? So it was very, very silly. And you kind of had to laugh because we're all trying to relax and be quiet and meditate. We've got someone in there who constantly shouts. You would have thought maybe this isn't the one for him. But then on the other hand, who's to say that why should we exclude him? So it was just very bizarre, meditation with someone shouting every few sort of moments. Oh, ridiculous. Oh God. And what can you say to him? Because you tell him to shut up and he goes quiet for like half a minute and then he does it again because it's compulsive. He doesn't have control over it. That's the whole point. Otherwise he would be out. He wouldn't be in there. He wouldn't be in a psychiatric ward if he can control it, Fuck. Soothing. Oh God. Yeah. Okay, so that was something. That happened in Ward 12. Okay, so there were things to do, but these things kind of were every now and again. I did a home economics class thing where we made a quiche, I believe it was a quiche, which was okay. And the occupational therapist, Hannah, had to tidy up because my parents came to take me out for leave during just right at the end. And I was like, can you clean up my mess for me? And she was like, okay, but I shouldn't really do it. You should do it for yourself and you should be responsible. And I went, okay, bye. and so she did it, which was a bit shit, but oh well, what are you going to do? Yeah, okay, so there's some important stuff that I need to cover, which is about the tribunal, okay? So I mentioned this like recently, that one of the topics I needed to talk about was the mental health tribunal that I went through. So let's talk about mental health tribunal. What is a mental health tribunal? Anybody? Mental health tribunal. Let's type it in. This is well researched, this video series. On the go. So, alright. Here we go. Overview. This is on the gov.uk website. Applying to the Mental Health Tribunal. Overview. You can apply to the first tier tribunal, mental health, if you're admitted, which says brackets, detained. So let's start this again. You can apply to the mental health tribunal if you're admitted or detained as a patient in a psychiatric hospital, sectioned, and want to be discharged, right? You can apply to the mental health tribunal if you're detained as a patient in a psychiatric hospital under a section and you want to be discharged. So I was sectioned in a psychiatric hospital and I wanted to be discharged. So I applied to the mental health tribunal, or the first tier tribunal. Okay. It says next, you can apply on a patient's behalf if you're their legal representative or nearest relative. The tribunal is independent of government and will listen to both sides of the argument before making a decision. You can also apply to the tribunal if you want to change a community treatment order or the conditions placed on your conditional discharge from hospital. The tribunal deals with cases in England. The rules are different in Wales and Scotland. So it says when to apply. When you apply depends on how you were admitted. Ask your doctor or lawyer if you have one if you're unsure. There are deadlines for the first time you apply. You must apply within 14 days if you've been admitted on a Section 2 for assessment, and you must apply within 6 months if you've been admitted on a Section 3 for treatment. Get legal advice if you're a restricted patient. For example, if you've received an order from the Crown Court or been transferred from prison, the deadlines depend on your situation. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I applied to the Mental Health Tribunal. I got given this form because I was like, I want to appeal. I didn't know what the right terms were, but I read it on this. Yeah, sorry, I got given a leaflet when I first entered hospital, right? And there was this part of it that, because it was telling you your rights as an inpatient in hospital. And it was saying that one of your rights was to appeal the section by going to a mental health tribunal. So yeah, so I must have, yeah, I remember asking for this form or whatever to fill out from the nurses in the nursing office. And so then what happened was I got assigned a what do you call that person? Advocate. I got assigned an advocate, which was someone who was, well, it was a mental health advocate worker. I don't really know how that job works, but her role was to take down my information, as in I was to tell her my story, right? I called this person up. I did all this myself, so you know I was still on the ball in some ways. And the whole point was to get help to express what I felt about my situation and my case, because I didn't feel like I could do it myself. So I got this free advocate to help me, and that was really, really nice actually, because in fact she was the only person who had listened to me through this whole time in a non-judgmental way. And she even refused to pass judgment. I even asked her to make a judgment and she refused. As in she didn't want to make any comment about what she thought about my situation. She was only there to take the information that I wanted to give her to support my case for wanting to be discharged, right? So she just kind of elicited the information, and like I asked her, "Do you think I'm of sound mind?" I asked her that question. "Do you think I'm of sound mind?" And she refused to make a comment. And I think that's really professional of her, actually, because probably I'm guessing her opinion is not really. You're not really of sound mind, but I'm not gonna. Professionally, I think it was very good what she did, because she was very um, non-judgmental and impersonal in that sense. She wasn't. It wasn't about taking sides at all. It was just like she is there to facilitate me being able to express my thoughts and feelings to the panel of judges, or whatever you call them, doctors and stuff, right? So I think that that was actually really nice. Sorry, for me to have that, because again, I've not actually spoken to anyone who was suspending judgment. Everyone I'd spoken to, my parents, my community mental health workers, even friends, who else? Doctors, people in the hospital. Everyone had already got this assumption that I was ill and there was something wrong with me. And most people who had any knowledge of it was that it was a psychosis or a schizophrenia case, right? So it was really nice to have this ability, or this moment, this brief moment, or a couple of sessions, I think it was, where I could tell this person everything from my perspective about my explanations of my behavior, and why I was behaving that way, and how I felt, and how I perceived things, and stuff. And as I say, she just basically she just elicited my story and my information, and wrote it down pretty much verbatim. So she was just there to kind of take down the information and to help me express myself where I didn't feel able to in front of all these high-powered people, who seemed to be against me. So that was really nice, and I was very grateful for that service, in fact, and it was free of charge. And I felt like I was fighting this massive system that I didn't really understand, because it's just so big, and there are these protocols, and it's like systems, just engaging with this system that has so many fucking moving parts, and I was just this tiny little bug being caught in the wheels and cogs of this massive machine, as I felt. Yeah, so that was really nice. Then what had to happen was there had to be another doctor to have like an assessment with me, as in to assess me, to present an alternative viewpoint of my case. So there was like the kind of standard case presented by my community mental health psychiatric doctors, or Dr. D'Souza, saying that I was having a first episode psychosis, and these were the symptoms, and these were the behaviours and everything. And the reports from my parents, and the evidence. They had various different things of evidence as well, which was like photographs taken in my bedroom where I'd written stuff on pieces of paper on the wall that were disturbing to the people who were reading them. They weren't disturbing to me, but they were disturbing to the people who read them. The fact that I'd painted my wall, and there were videos of me painting my wall, and I was like, well, this is just an artistic expression. It's not actually a symptom of a mental health problem. So things like that were being used as evidence, and in fact they used my journals as evidence, because of the things I'd written, and the pictures I'd drawn in there were apparently evidence for my psychosis, according to that particular person and that particular view, right? So I got given another doctor who it was like part of the mental health tribunal thing, had to come in and reassess me and talk to me, to present an alternative viewpoint, right? So I had the advocate to take my personal point of view down, then I had the doctor talk to me, and then he presented his own alternative perspective on, like from a medical perspective, I mean. So he presented it kind of in medical terms after talking to me. So I had these two people, right? And so the tribunal was scheduled for a certain point in my stay, which happened to be about 3 weeks after I was put into hospitals. Those 3 weeks after I was sectioned, right? Now, for me, that was quite long, as in, I felt like I was pretty fucking hopeless by that point anyway, and I didn't know whether it was going to work or not. You know, I felt like this was my last chance to really affect a change for myself by doing this mental health tribunal. And I was really scared, actually. I was scared that it wasn't going to work. And I was scared that I would have tried my best and it was going to fail, and I would still be stuck in there. So anyway, it was scheduled for the 3 weeks point, and it was quite an intimidating scenario when it did come about. I mean, I was already crapping myself beforehand anyway for I don't know, however long, a week or something in advance of it. I don't know how long I had to wait actually, but it felt like it was anxiety provoking to have to wait for this thing to happen as well. Because I was unsure if it was going to happen, and then it was going to happen, and I did get a date for it, and but it was all very stressful. Anyway, so when it came to the day of the mental health tribunal, the format was that there was I don't know, a panel of doctors. Well, I see them as judges. A panel of judges. So it was in one of the meeting rooms in the hospital itself. And I was allowed to bring one friend or something. I think I was allowed one friend, and I invited my friend Mark, who was a long-time friend at that point, and still is a long-time friend. But he's not exactly a normal person, and he doesn't exactly have the best of social awareness. So he had to take a phone call halfway through this very important meeting. Oh dear! So he got up and was fidgeting about and stuff with his phone. And had to go out. It was just a mess. So I was thinking, oh man, I really shouldn't have fucking invited this guy. Anyway, I did, and that was annoying and weird. Anyway, but so there's this panel, and I feel like there's 4 people on there. There might be 3, but I feel like there's 4 people on this judge panel, right? And there's one of the doctors who is a doctor at the hospital. There's Dr. Clifford, I believe. I can't actually remember who they were. I only remember one particular person on that panel, and he was one of the doctors who was assigned to my case while I was in the hospital. But I didn't get actually any contact with that doctor apart from like here and there. So I don't think he really knew my case. He didn't know me anyway. He might have known me through my notes and through what other people were saying, but I don't think he knew me through me. Anyway, then so that other doctor, the other doctor who had got that second opinion from me made a case as well. I don't know who these cases were being made to exactly, but someone was obviously going to make a decision. I believe my dad was there as well, and I made a statement myself. I stood up and made a statement. I can't remember exactly what I said, but I was something along the lines of it was unjust, and that it's been a misunderstanding or something. I can't exactly remember what I said, but I was saying something like it was unfair and that this is a matter of perspective or something, and it's incorrect or something, or invalid that I should be in hospital. And the doctor who had given this second opinion, he said, and he was arguing that my behaviour and my beliefs and stuff was not a psychological disturbance, but the result of an alternative lifestyle that based upon my spiritual leanings and meditational practices, which was what I believed myself as well, but no one else believed it. So he put forward the view that it was not a mental health disturbance, but a what can we call it? A problem of like culture clash, if that makes sense. So I was going through this alternative lifestyle, and the people around me could not mesh with that lifestyle, so they thought that it was an illness, but I didn't think it was an illness, and he argued that it wasn't an illness, but he may well have thought that it was an illness, but he had to make something that was a defense, because he was a defense doctor. He was defending my point of view. I don't know if the advocate spoke as well, or if she was just there to like relay information from me to the team in advance of the tribunal. But I remember that I kind of cried a little bit when I gave my statement. It was quite distressing for me, because also I felt like this was like my last stand. This was like the final and only possible chance that I might have of getting free of that on my own terms. So I cried a little bit because it was moving, and I felt like it was sort of like my last chance, as I said, to be free. Anyway, Mark went and had his phone call, which was bizarre. I don't know if my dad had to give a speech or whatever as well. I think he did. Anyway, the result of the tribunal was that they were just going to continue me being in hospital. I mean, you know that already from what I've said before. So I wasn't set free, and they said that no, that there's not enough evidence or compelling evidence to say that I was just going through a alternative lifestyle that people around me couldn't accept. And there was more evidence to show that I was going through a psychological disturbance of psychosis, right? So that sucked, I'll tell you that much. However, something good did come out of it, which was, because I'd done this mental health tribunal, there was a sort of, oops, just farted there. Oh, and again, and again. Oh, no, don't laugh when you got farts. They'll pop them out. Anyway, something good did happen. Something good did happen from doing this mental health tribunal, which was that because I'd done it, there was this review of my case going on, right? So the mental health tribunal is a review of the case overall to see whether I should be in there or not. And what came out of it was, why have I not been assigned for leave yet? Because we didn't know the system. I didn't really know the system. My parents didn't really know the system. I just felt like I'd been chucked into this place with a little leaflet to explain things, and just like being chucked into the ocean and just amongst a load of weird fish, and then a few bossy fish telling you what to do. But so we didn't know about Section 17 leave up until that point. So I'd been in there for 3 weeks, having not seen the outside world at all for that time period. I think it was like 2.5 to 3 weeks. And that's distressing. Really distressing for me to not be outside, to not see the nature, to not see other people, to be contained. Very distressing experience. But going through the mental health tribunal, one of the doctors said, why haven't you got Section 17 leave sorted out? We can do that so that you get time out to be with family and to go out and whatever for 4 hours or maybe it was just 1 hour. I think it was graded, so it was like 1 hour to begin with a nurse around the grounds, then 2 hours with a nurse around the grounds, and then maybe it was like 4 hours with a nurse outside or something. No, maybe 1 hour with a nurse outside the grounds, and then 2 hours, and then it built up to 4 hours, and I was allowed to go out with family and stuff. So that was something positive that came out of it. But it was kind of annoying because I felt like, well, if I hadn't done the whole kerfuffle of the tribunal, then would I have been offered leave? When would I have had to wait for leave, you know? Could I have had that sooner and it just wasn't told to me? Like, what the hell? If I was allowed Section 17 leave, but I only got offered it after going through this like mental health tribunal drama situation by causing a fuss, basically, then when would I have been offered the Section 17 leave? Would I have had to wait until some random occasion when they suddenly went, oh, hold on a minute, I've just remembered. What about leave? You know? So, I don't know. It's just very depressing, the whole thing. So, to summarise the Mental Health Tribunal, the Mental Health Tribunal is an opportunity for a patient to argue their case or appeal their case or try to get the decision changed or to get themselves discharged from hospital, right? So I was like, okay, I want to do that. And I did it. It was very stressful to do it. Here we go. Sorry, hold on. Just found some more information. Hearings are usually held in private and attended by 3 tribunal members, a judge, tribunal doctor, and a mental health expert. The patient, their hospital doctor, ward nurse, and social worker. The doctor, nurse, and social worker will give evidence. You can also give evidence and ask questions. The tribunal will also look at your pre-hearing examination from the tribunal doctor. That was the one who asked me bits and bobs. Tribunal doctor. An independent psychiatric report if your legal representative asks for one. Oh yeah, well, whatever. Okay, so I'm just reading a bit here now about the tribunal's decision. The tribunal usually decides at the end of the hearing on whether you should be discharged. You'll get the decision on the day, and you'll usually get full written reasons within 7 days of the hearing. The tribunal can order your release. The tribunal can recommend that you're transferred to a different hospital. The tribunal can ask that your doctor considers you for treatment in the community. And the tribunal can recommend that you're allowed to leave the hospital for periods of time to see if you're ready for life in the community. The tribunal cannot change your treatment, for example, medication. Oh yeah, appeal. If you lose your case, you can ask the tribunal to cancel the decision. You must do this within 28 days of getting the written decision for permission to appeal to a higher tribunal, the upper tribunal. So I don't think I bothered with that. I just went, oh, fuck it, I can't be asked. I thought about appealing the decision. I may well have even appealed it, but I think that just got said turned down. So everything I tried was like, no, we've decided you're mental, you're in hospital, you're going to stay here. And sorry, nice try for trying to get out on your own terms, but no, we decide, we hold the key, you're in here, you're fucked, it's all up to us, we decide your life now. Yeah, okay, so in summary, I tried to get out through the Mental Health Tribunal, went through it all, and still couldn't get out, and that was pretty fucking depressing. However, I was glad that I tried, and I'm glad that I did try. My dad sounds or speaks of it as though it was really distressing for me, as in for him, sorry, that I did this tribunal, because from his perspective, he didn't want me out when I wasn't ready, as in he didn't want me to get set free into the wild when I was obviously, from his perspective, obviously still psychotic and being weird and not having had the full effect of my treatment yet. So he was like, oh God, what's he doing now? He's going to a mental health tribunal and he might be able to get away with it, as in he might get set free and stuff. And then we'll be fucked. We have to go through this all again and get him sectioned again and all that. So my dad wasn't happy about the fact that I'd done it. He was shitting himself. And I was shitting myself that it might not work. So it was just a bit of a drama, really. And I was gutted that they said no. But I think by that point, I was so gutted about being in there that every extra bit of disappointment and guttedness just added to the pile. And I was like, well, oh well, at least I tried. And there was the good thing that came out of it, which was the leave. The Section 17 leave stuff was good. Yeah. So maybe I should talk something about the leave. I don't know what else to talk about really. So that was the tribunal. The failure of a tribunal. Yeah. It was really a protest move. I was trying to stick to my guns and have this feeling of integrity that, look, I feel like I shouldn't be here. This is wrong that I'm here. Therefore, I'm going to appeal this, as in I'm going to fight this and try and get free. Because for my own personal integrity, that is what I need to do. I want to be out of here. I don't think I should be here. This is not the right place for me. I shouldn't be in any kind of psychiatric ward or any psychiatric establishment. So I'm going to do all that I can to get myself free of this. So I am glad that I did it, because it was empowering in as much as there was something I could do. There was something I could try. It didn't work, but at least I did it. Because if I hadn't done it, then I think I would have been more downtrodden and more depressed. But I was quite a fighter, I was quite strong-willed and wanted to do everything I could to improve my situation. Because I really felt like this was a test of my dignity and a test of my humanity as well, and a test of my standing up for myself, if that's a thing. Yeah. And I just wasn't gonna take it quietly, if that makes sense. I wasn't gonna just succumb to this fate that had been described for me and prescribed for me by outside influences and outside forces, without me having a jolly good go at trying to get out of it in whatever way I could. So yeah, there we go. All right, that concludes today's session. I do apologise for the frozen face. I don't know what that is about. Good. Thanks very much for watching and listening, mainly. And I will talk to you again soon. Fieros Reborn. I'm going to have a fart session. Good night.